It was 2 a.m. when I overheard my daughter-in-law on the phone. Tomorrow we're sending her to a nursing home. Everything set. My heart sank. I quietly grabbed my bag and slipped out the back door. The next day, they were frantically searching for me. Can you believe it? My own son and daughter-in-law, plotting to throw me into a nursing home like I was some old, broken piece of furniture. But they made one fatal mistake. They completely underestimated the woman they thought they could discard. My name is Margaret, and I'm 70 years old. For 5 long years, I lived under their roof, in a house I truly believed was my sanctuary, with a family I thought loved me. Oh, how incredibly naive I was. It all started when I lost my husband. Daniel, my son, showed up at my door, tears streaming down his face, telling me he couldn't bear to leave me alone, that he was my only family, that he needed me close. His words, dripping with what I thought was genuine love, wrapped around my heart. I sold my condo, my last anchor to independence, and moved in with them. At first, it was like a dream. Daniel was so affectionate, Victoria greeted me with warm smiles, and I felt useful, helping with housework and doting on them. But like a slowly creeping shadow, those smiles began to fade. The sweet words turned sharp, the hugs hollow. And I, like an utter fool, convinced myself it was just a rough patch, that things would surely get better. Victoria was the first to shed her disguise. It started subtly, with seemingly innocent comments. Margaret, don't you think you're eating a bit too much? Or, maybe you should stay in your room when we have guests. The house looks tidier that way. The jabs were small, but they chipped away at my spirit. And Daniel? My own son? He never contradicted her. Worse, he started backing her up. Mom, Victoria's right. It's better if you get more rest. Rest, that became their favorite word, a polite way of telling me to disappear. Months crawled by, and the humiliations intensified. Victoria stopped cooking for me. If you want something special to eat, you can make it yourself, she'd say, with that sickeningly fake smile she'd perfected. Daniel would come home, see my empty plate as they finished their own lavish dinner, and ask, "Did you eat, Mom?" A distracted question, not really waiting for an answer. My heart ached. I felt invisible. One night, I was washing dishes after they'd gone to their room, and their voices drifted through the thin wall. "You can't keep this up forever," Victoria hissed. "She's too much of a burden." Daniel's reply was weak. "I know, but she's my mother." "Exactly. She's your mother, not mine. And I didn't marry you to become a full-time nurse for the elderly." My hands trembled, the plate rattling. A nurse for the elderly, that's all I was to her. Not a mother-in-law, not a future grandmother, just a burden. A weight. The following weeks were pure hell. Victoria treated me like I was air. She'd walk past me without a glance, respond with one-word answers, or simply ignore me. Daniel was no better. A quick kiss for Victoria, a distant nod for me, as if I were a stranger in his own home. But the deepest cut? Hearing them whisper about me, thinking I couldn't hear. "She's getting slower," Victoria would complain. "Yesterday, it took her an hour to do something that should take 20 minutes. "Maybe we should look into some options," Daniel would reply, his voice hesitant. Options, that word haunted my sleepless nights. What kind of options? I didn't dare ask, but deep down, I already knew. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to find out, was that I had secrets. Secrets I'd kept hidden, like cards up my sleeve, for the day I would need them. My late husband and I had been meticulous with our finances. Properties, investments, savings that had grown silently. When I sold my condo, I didn't spend that money, I invested it. And it had grown. A lot. Plus, there was something else entirely, something they were completely unaware of, that could change everything if I chose to reveal it. Then came that August night. I was pretending to sleep in my small room at the end of the hall when I heard footsteps. Victoria, on the phone, her voice a low murmur from the kitchen. I crept silently to my door. Her words pierced me like daggers. "Yes, I've already spoken with the director. She can take her in tomorrow." Daniel agrees. "We just need her to sign the papers." A pause. My heart hammered, so loud I was sure she could hear it. "No, she doesn't know anything. Tomorrow, we'll tell her it's just a visit to see the place. Once she's there, it will be easier to convince her to stay." Another, longer pause. "Do I feel bad? Please. We've been putting up with her for 5 years. It's time for her to live her own life, in the place where she belongs." My knees nearly buckled. The nursing home. They were going to take me to a nursing home. Without consulting me, without giving me a choice, as if I were a piece of old, unwanted furniture. In that instant, something snapped. I couldn't just lie there, waiting for morning, waiting for them to drag me away like an animal to the slaughter. Very slowly, I returned to my room, grabbed my purse. Inside were my most important documents, some cash, and my phone. It was all I needed for now. I waited until I heard Victoria go upstairs and her bedroom door click shut. Then, like a thief in my own house, I tiptoed to the back door. The night air was cool against my skin. For the first time in years, I took a deep breath, and it tasted like freedom. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but one thing was crystal clear: I was never going to be anyone's victim again. I walked the dark streets for an hour, the adrenaline thrumming, before catching a cab. I gave the driver the address of the most elegant hotel in the city. If they were going to treat me like a homeless person, it was time to remind them who I truly was. The receptionist looked at me strangely when I arrived at 3 a.m. with just a purse, but my credit card spoke for itself. The presidential suite for 2 nights to start. I sat on that king-size bed, in that room that cost more per night than Daniel earned in a week. And for the first time in years, I truly smiled. At 6 a.m., my phone began to ring. Daniel. I let it ring. He called again. And again. Then the text started. Mom, where are you? We're worried. Please answer. Worried? What a convenient word. By 8, Victoria had started calling too. Her voice on the voicemail was hysterical. Margaret, please come back. We don't know what happened. Daniel is desperate. Desperate? Probably because their nursing home plan had just gone up in smoke. I ordered room service. Eggs Benedict, smoked salmon, fresh fruit, Colombian coffee. As I ate on the terrace, overlooking the city waking up, I imagined Daniel and Victoria frantically searching, calling hospitals, maybe even the police. Let them worry. Let them feel even a fraction of the anguish I had felt for years. After breakfast, I made some important calls. First, my bank. I wanted to know exactly how much I had. The figure stunned even me. My investments had far exceeded expectations. The second call was more delicate. Benjamin Carter, the best family law attorney in the city. He'd handled my husband's. Well, years ago. Mrs. Margaret? His voice sounded surprised. How are you? I need to see you urgently, Benjamin. I have a complicated family situation. Of course. Can you come in this afternoon? I'll be there. The third call was the most important. I dialed a number I'd saved for 5 years, ever since moving in with Daniel. It was Lauren, my old friend and real estate agent. Margaret, what a surprise. How are you, dear? Lauren, I need a very special favor. Remember that property downtown you saw years ago? The one you said would be perfect if I ever decided to be independent again. While we talked, my phone vibrated with missed calls. Daniel had called 14 times. Victoria, 8. They'd even found my late husband's emergency contact number and called there. How desperate it must be, not to be able to control someone when you're used to manipulating them. At 2 p.m., I walked down to the hotel lobby, dressed in my best pearl gray suit and elegant leather shoes. I had an appointment at the hotel's beauty salon. Manicure, pedicure, cut, and style. If I was going to start a war, I would look impeccable. The stylist, a young woman named Katie, looked at me curiously. Special occasion, ma'am? You could say that, I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. It's the first day of the rest of my life. While Katie worked on my hair, I reflected on the last 5 years. How had I allowed them to treat me like that? When had I stopped valuing myself? The answer was painful but clear. The moment I thought being a burden was better than being alone. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had money. I had resources. And most importantly, I had the truth on my side. At 4 p.m., I arrived at Benjamin's office on the 25th floor of a skyscraper in the financial district. The windows overlooked the entire city. From there, I could even see the neighborhood where Daniel lived. Margaret, you look splendid, Benjamin said, pouring me a coffee. But something tells me this isn't a social visit. I told him everything. The overheard conversation, the nursing home plan, my nighttime escape. Benjamin took notes, his expression growing more serious with each detail. This is very serious, Margaret. What they planned could constitute elder abuse, especially if it was without your consent. What are my options? Many. But first, tell me, do they know about your real financial situation? No. They have no idea. Daniel thinks I'm a poor widow living off his charity. Benjamin smiled for the first time. Then we have a considerable advantage. He explained the legal options, restraining orders, lawsuits for emotional abuse, even criminal charges. But I have a different proposal, he continued, his eyes sparkling with a glint I immediately liked. What if we teach them a lesson they will never forget? I'm all ears, Benjamin. We are going to show them exactly what the woman they thought they could discard is worth. But we will do it in a way that the blow is public, definitive, and completely legal. I left that office with a plan. A plan that would take a few weeks to execute, but would be worth every minute of the wait. Back at the hotel, I finally decided to answer one of Daniel's calls. Mom, thank God. Where are you? We've been looking for you everywhere. Victoria is crying. We thought something terrible had happened to you. His voice sounded genuinely concerned. He almost convinced me. Almost. I'm fine, Daniel. I just needed to go for a walk and clear my head. A walk? It's been more than 12 hours. Where are you exactly? In a safe place. Don't worry about me. Mom, please come home. We can talk about whatever is bothering you. Talk. As if it were that simple. You know what, Daniel? You're right. We do need to talk. But not on the phone. In person, and when I'm ready. When will that be? Soon. Very soon. I hung up before he could reply. That night, as I had lobster for dinner in my suite, overlooking the city lights, I toasted to myself. To the woman I had been, to the woman I was reclaiming, and to the woman I was becoming. Daniel and Victoria had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the wrong woman. The following days were a whirlwind of strategic preparation and personal rediscovery. Every morning, I woke up in that luxurious suite, ordered breakfast to my room, and worked on my battle plan. Daniel and Victoria kept calling, their messages evolving from concern to pleading, and then to something dangerously close to veiled threats. Mom, this isn't funny anymore, Daniel said in his last message. Victoria is sick with nerves. You need to come back right now, or we will have to take more drastic measures. More drastic measures, like taking me to the nursing home by force? How utterly predictable they were. But there was something else they didn't know. Something Benjamin had uncovered. It turned out the house where they had lived all these years, the house Daniel considered his, actually had a more complicated history. When my husband died, he left that property in a trust under my name. Daniel could live there as long as I was alive and consented. But technically, legally, the house was mine. He'd never bothered to read the full will documents. Why would he? After all, I was just his poor widowed mother who depended on his generosity. On the 4th day of my disappearance, I decided it was time for the next phase. Lauren had found the perfect apartment. A penthouse in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, fully furnished, with 24-hour concierge service. Margaret, this place is a dream, she gushed as we toured it. 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a terrace with a hot tub, and the most spectacular view in the entire city. When can I move in? Whenever you want. The owner is desperate to rent it to someone reliable. I signed the lease that same afternoon. 2 years, paid in advance in cash. After leaving the real estate office, I took a taxi to the city's most elegant shopping mall. It was time to renew my wardrobe. For years, I had dressed like the poor widow they thought I was, worn out clothes, dull colors, comfortable but uninspired. That ended today. At the most exclusive boutique, a saleswoman named Katie attended to me with that mix of professional courtesy and slight disdain reserved for customers who didn't look like they could afford the merchandise. How can I help you, ma'am? I need a completely new wardrobe. Business suits, cocktail dresses, shoes, accessories, everything. Her expression shifted slightly when I pulled out my black card. 2 hours later, I walked out with 8 bags full of clothes that cost more than Daniel earned in 3 months. Dresses in emerald, cherry red, gold, deep violet. I would never wear sad colors again. That night, as I was unpacking my new acquisitions, my phone rang. An unknown number. Hello, Mrs. Margaret. This is Inspector Marcus Riley from the City Police. Your son Daniel filed a missing person report. Could you confirm that you're okay? Interesting. They had escalated the drama to involve the police. Inspector, I am perfectly fine. I am in full command of my mental faculties, and I decided to take a vacation. There is no disappearance to investigate. Could you tell me where you are exactly? Your son is very worried. I am in the city in a safe place. Inspector, I want it on record that I left that house of my own free will, and I do not wish to be contacted until I am ready. Understood, ma'am. Is there anything else you need? Yes. If my son or his wife file any more false reports about me, I want them to know that I might consider it harassment. The silence on the other end of the line was eloquent. The next day, I moved into the penthouse. The movers arrived at the hotel at 8 a.m. to transport my few belongings. It was strange how little I needed when I was truly starting over. My new home was everything Lauren had promised and more. From the terrace, I could see the entire city spread out at my feet. I poured myself a glass of red wine and toasted to my new independence. But the real satisfaction came that afternoon, when I finally decided to answer one of Daniel's calls. Mom, thank God. The police told us you're okay, but we need to see you. Where are you exactly? I'm at my new home, Daniel. Your new home? What are you talking about? I moved. I got my own apartment. A long silence. With what money, Mom? You don't have the resources to live alone. You need to come home before you do something you'll regret. My home. Interesting he used that word. What do you mean? Nothing, son. Just that it's funny how sometimes words reveal more than we intend. Mom, you're talking strangely. Victoria says maybe you need medical help. We could take you to a doctor for a checkup. There it was. The real Victoria, surfacing. Victoria says that. How thoughtful of her to be concerned about my mental health. She just wants what's best for you. We all want what's best for you. Like taking me to a nursing home? The silence that followed was deafening. What are you talking about? I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, Daniel. Mom, we never. Never what? Never planned to commit me without my consent? Never discussed how convenient it would be to get rid of the burden I represent. I don't know where you heard that, but I heard it from your wife's lips, Daniel. At 2 a.m. on the phone, arranging my fate as if I were a piece of old furniture to be discarded. Another long, tense silence. Mom, if you overheard something, it was out of context. Out of context? We're taking her to the nursing home tomorrow. It's all arranged. What context could possibly make those words mean something different? We were just exploring options. Without consulting me? You thought it would be for the best. You thought it would be more convenient for you. It's not like that. Then explain it to me, Daniel. Explain how planning to commit your mother without her knowledge is an act of love. He couldn't. There was no explanation that could justify the unjustifiable. I want to see you, he finally said. We need to talk in person. I agree. But it will be when I decide, where I decide, and on my terms. When? Soon, son. Very soon. And when we do see each other, you're going to discover a few things about your poor widowed mother that are going to surprise you very much. I hung up before he could respond. That night, as I had dinner on my terrace under the stars, I called Benjamin. How is our project coming along? Better than expected, Margaret. I have some very interesting information about Daniel and Victoria's finances. Apparently, they've been living beyond their means for years. How far beyond? Credit card debt, personal loans, a late mortgage. They've been using your presence in the house to justify expenses they can't afford. Interesting. There's more. Apparently, Victoria has been telling her friends that you have senile dementia and that's why you need special care. She's been building a narrative to justify the nursing home. My blood boiled. Do you have proof of that? I'm gathering it, Margaret. When we're done with this, they are going to regret ever messing with you. I hung up with a smile on my lips. Daniel and Victoria had no idea what was coming for them. A week after moving into the penthouse, I had established my new routine. Breakfast on the terrace, a workout in the building's gym, afternoons working with Benjamin on our master plan. For the first time in years, I felt alive, powerful, in control of my destiny. Daniel had stopped calling after our last conversation. Victoria, on the other hand, had intensified her attempts. Her voicemails revealed a growing desperation. Margaret, please come back. Daniel is a mess. He's barely eating, barely sleeping. This is destroying us as a family. As a family, what irony. Margaret, I know you're angry, but running away doesn't solve anything. We're adults. We can talk like civilized people. Civilized people, like when they were planning to commit me without my consent? But the message that caught my attention the most arrived on a Thursday night. Margaret, I need to be honest with you. Daniel is considering reporting you as mentally incompetent. He says your behavior proves you can't make rational decisions. Please come back before this gets out of control. There was the real Victoria, the veiled threat wrapped in false concern. I forwarded the message to Benjamin immediately. Perfect, he said when I called him. This is exactly what we needed. They're digging their own grave. How so? If Daniel tries to have you declared mentally incompetent, we would have grounds for a lawsuit for defamation and elder abuse. But more importantly, it would be the perfect time to reveal your true financial situation. Do you have everything ready for phase 2? Everything is prepared. Are you sure you want to do this in public? Absolutely. I want it to be as humiliating for them as it was for me to hear their plans that night. The plan was simple, yet devastating. Lauren had organized a luxury property exhibition at the most exclusive hotel in the city. Daniel and Victoria had been specifically invited, with the excuse that there was an investment opportunity that might interest them. What they didn't know is that I would be the event's keynote speaker. The day arrived faster than expected. I dressed in my new emerald-colored suit, high heels, and jewelry I had bought especially for the occasion. In the mirror, I saw a woman I didn't recognize. Elegant, powerful, intimidating. I arrived at the hotel an hour before the guests. The ballroom was perfectly prepared, tables with property information, canapes, champagne, and a giant screen where presentations would be projected. Lauren was checking the final details when Benjamin arrived with a portfolio full of documents. "Ready for the show?" he asked me. "More than ready." At 7, the guests began to arrive. Business people, investors, wealthy individuals genuinely interested in the properties. And then at 7:30, I saw them walk in. Daniel was wearing his only good suit, the one he wore for weddings and funerals. Victoria had tried to look elegant in a red dress she'd probably bought on sale. They looked completely out of place among the city's financial elite. I watched them from the other side of the ballroom as they looked for whoever had invited them. Their faces showed a mix of nervousness and excitement. They probably thought someone had recognized their investment potential. Lauren went up to the small stage to give the welcome speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our exclusive exhibition of premium properties. Tonight, we have the honor of presenting a carefully chosen selection of the best real estate investments in the city." Daniel and Victoria were smiling nervously, trying to blend in with the other guests. But before we begin with the properties, Lauren continued, "I want to introduce you to an extraordinary woman, a visionary investor who has recently decided to significantly expand her real estate portfolio. Please, let's welcome Mrs. Margaret Vance." The audience's applause accompanied me as I walked onto the stage. From my elevated position, I could perfectly see Daniel and Victoria's faces. First, confusion. What was their poor widowed mother doing at a luxury investment event? Then, recognition. It was really me, but transformed, elegant, speaking with confidence in front of an elite audience. Finally, horror, as they began to understand the implications of what they were seeing. "Good evening," I began, my voice clear and firm. "Over the last 5 years, I have learned a lot about the true value of things. Above all, I have learned that sometimes the people closest to us can be the ones who know us the least." I looked directly at where Daniel and Victoria were standing. Their faces had lost all color. "I have decided to share my story with you because I believe it perfectly illustrates why it is so important to maintain our financial independence, regardless of our age." The audience listened attentively. Some had already noticed where I was directing my gaze. 5 years ago, I decided to move in with my son and his wife. I sold my property and thought it would be wonderful to live as a family. What I did not expect was to discover that my presence had become a burden to them. A murmur went through the ballroom. This was not the typical investment presentation they were expecting. 2 weeks ago, I happened to overhear a phone conversation. My daughter-in-law was arranging for me to be committed to a nursing home without my knowledge or consent. "We're taking her to the nursing home tomorrow. It's all arranged." Those were her exact words. The murmur intensified. Some guests began to look around, trying to identify the protagonists of the story. Daniel tried to move toward the exit, but Victoria stopped him. She probably thought that running away would confirm their guilt. That night, I made a decision. Instead of becoming a victim of their plan, I decided to remind them of something they had completely forgotten. I paused dramatically. That the woman they planned to discard as a nuisance had her own resources. Considerable resources. Benjamin appeared beside the stage with a portfolio of documents. "Tonight, I have purchased 3 properties from this exhibition," I continued. "A penthouse in the financial district, a country house in the mountains, and a commercial building downtown. Total investment, $2 million in cash." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Daniel looked as if he was about to faint. Victoria's mouth was wide open. "I want this to serve as a lesson for everyone present," I continued. "Never underestimate older people. And never, ever assume you know someone's true situation." I came down from the stage to thunderous applause. The audience was fascinated by the drama they had just witnessed. I walked directly toward Daniel and Victoria. Other guests had already realized who they were and were looking at them with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "Hello, son," I said in a calm voice. "Surprised to see me?" Daniel looked at me as if he had seen a ghost. His face had gone from white to red, and then to a sickly green. Victoria, on the other hand, looked like a marble statue, completely paralyzed. "Mom," Daniel whispered. "What? What is all this?" "This, my son, is reality. The reality that you two never bothered to get to know. The other guests began to gather discreetly, pretending to look at property brochures while listening to our conversation. The drama was too juicy to ignore. Mrs. Margaret, Lauren intervened with a malicious smile. Are these the relatives you told me about? The ones who thought you needed special care? Victoria finally found her voice. Margaret, this is... I don't understand anything. Since when do you have so much money? Since always, my dear Victoria. It's just that you assumed I was a poor, helpless widow. You never asked. You were never interested in really knowing my situation. Daniel tried to approach. Mom, if you had resources, why didn't you tell us? We could have what, Daniel? Treated me with respect? Consulted me before planning my life? Or you simply would have found more creative ways to take advantage? An older man who had been listening came over. Excuse me, ma'am, but is it true that they plan to commit you without your consent? Completely true, I replied, without taking my eyes off Daniel. My daughter-in-law arranged everything over the phone. It's all arranged were her words. The man shook his head in disgust. That's elder abuse. They should be in jail. Victoria turned as red as a tomato. That's not true. We only wanted what was best for her. We thought she needed more care. Care? My voice rose slightly. Like ignoring me during dinners? Like making me feel invisible in my own house? Like arguing about how annoying my presence was? More people had gathered around us. Some were discreetly recording with their phones. Margaret, please, Daniel pleaded. People are staring at us. We can discuss this in private. In private? Like when you discussed my future in private without including me. Benjamin appeared at my side with a folder. Mrs. Margaret, would you like me to show them the documents now? What documents? Victoria asked nervously. The documents that prove that the house you've been living in for these 5 years is legally mine, I replied calmly. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel looked as if he had been slapped. What are you saying? I'm saying that when your father died, he left that property in a trust under my name. You can live there as long as I'm alive and I consent. But technically, legally, the house is mine. Victoria staggered. That can't be true. Benjamin opened the folder and showed the documents. These are the trust papers, duly registered and notarized. Mrs. Margaret is the legal owner of the property. Daniel took the documents with trembling hands. But I thought. Dad told me the house would be mine. Your father told you that you could live there and take care of me. That's not the same as being the owner. An elegant woman who had been listening came closer. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Julia Vance from the city's financial newspaper. Would you be willing to give an interview about your story? Of course, I replied. I think it's important for people to know what can happen to senior citizens when family makes the wrong assumptions. Daniel grabbed my arm. Mom, please don't make this public. We can sort this out among ourselves. I gently freed myself from his grip. Like when you sorted out my future among yourselves. Without consulting me, without including me, treating me like an object to be disposed of. It wasn't like that. Victoria shouted, completely losing her composure. We took care of you for 5 years. We gave you a roof over your head, food, everything you needed. You gave me? My voice turned icy. You gave me a roof over my head in my own house. The murmur of indignation from those present was audible. Several were clearly on the side of the elegant older woman who had been betrayed by her own family. Mrs. Margaret, the journalist said. What are your plans now? Very simple, I replied with a smile. I am going to live my life on my own terms, in my own home, with my own money. And I am going to make sure my story serves as a warning to other seniors who may be in similar situations. Daniel looked completely defeated. And what about us? Where are we going to live? That, I said as I walked towards the exit, is an excellent question, one you should have asked yourselves before you planned on sending me to a nursing home. The following days were a whirlwind of media activity. The story of the betrayed millionaire grandmother had gone viral on social media. The videos from the event had been shared thousands of times, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests. But the most satisfying part was watching Daniel and Victoria try to manage their public image. Victoria had created an Instagram account where she tried to tell her side of the story. People don't understand, she wailed in her tearful videos. We love Margaret like family. We only wanted what was best for her. Modern nursing homes are beautiful places where seniors can socialize and receive professional care. Her followers didn't believe a word of it. The comments were ruthless. Without consulting her at 2 a.m.? That's not love, it's abuse. And why didn't you know she had money? Weren't you interested in actually getting to know the woman you lived with? My grandmother always says, the family that betrays you once will betray you always. Daniel had opted for a different strategy. He had started calling me directly, leaving increasingly desperate messages. Mom, this is getting out of control. Victoria is getting threats online. People recognize us on the street and insult us. Please say something publicly to calm things down. Calm things down? After 5 years of humiliation, they wanted me to defend them publicly? The message that struck me the most arrived a week after the event. Mom, we lost our jobs. Victoria was fired because the story reached her office. I was asked to resign because my family situation was affecting the company's image. We don't have money to pay rent. If we have to move, please help us. Help them. Funny how their tone changed when they needed something. That afternoon, I had the most important interview scheduled so far, the most watched morning television show in the country. Julia had arranged for it to be live, from my penthouse, to showcase my new life. I prepared carefully, a violet dress, elegant jewelry, perfect makeup. When the camera crew arrived, my apartment looked like something out of a decorating magazine. We're live in 3, 2, 1. Good morning. I'm Julia Vance, and I'm here with Margaret Vance, the woman whose story has moved the entire country. Margaret, tell us, how do you feel after everything that has happened? Julia, I feel free. For the first time in 5 years. Free to live without apologizing for existing. Free to make my own decisions. Free to be treated with the respect I deserve. Your daughter-in-law, Victoria, has been giving interviews saying that you only wanted to protect her, that the nursing home was for your well-being. Julia, when someone plans your future without consulting you, secretly, in the middle of the night, that's not protection, that's control. And when they have also been treating you like a burden for years, it's hard to believe their motives were truly altruistic. What would you say to other seniors who might be going through similar situations? I would tell them that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, that you shouldn't let anyone make you feel like a burden, and above all, to maintain control over your own lives and finances. Now, we understand that your son Daniel has been trying to contact you. Yes, he has been calling, especially since they lost their jobs. And what do you plan to do about it? Look, Julia, I'm not a vengeful person, but I'm not a foolish person either. For 5 years, Daniel and Victoria treated me as if I were invisible when they thought I depended on them. Now that they've discovered I have my own resources, suddenly I'm important again. Are you willing to reconcile with them? A real reconciliation requires a genuine acknowledgement of the harm caused. It requires sincere apologies, and it requires real changes in behavior. So far, all I've received are excuses and justifications. Victoria says the consequences have been disproportionate, that losing their jobs is too much of a punishment. Disproportionate. My voice hardened slightly. You know what's disproportionate? Planning to commit someone without their consent. That is disproportionate. What are your plans for the future? I'm considering creating a foundation to help seniors facing family abuse. I want my experience to serve to protect others. One last question, Margaret. Do you regret anything? I thought carefully before answering. I regret allowing them to treat me badly for so long. I regret wasting 5 years feeling like a burden when in reality I was an independent and capable woman. But I do not regret taking back control of my life. When the interview ended, my phone exploded with messages. Hundreds of people sharing their own stories, thanking me for speaking out, offering support. But the message that caught my attention the most came from an unknown number. Mrs. Margaret, this is Stephen Clark, an investigative journalist. I have information about your son's finances that I think you would be interested in knowing. Could we talk? I smiled as I dialed the number. Daniel and Victoria hadn't seen anything yet. The meeting with Stephen was revealing in ways I hadn't expected. He arrived at my penthouse with a folder full of documents and a serious expression that immediately put me on alert. Mrs. Margaret, after your television interview, I decided to investigate your family situation more deeply. What I found is disturbing. He sat across from me in the living room and opened the folder on the glass table. For the last 5 years, Daniel and Victoria have been using your presence in the house to obtain credits and loans they couldn't have gotten otherwise. What do you mean, exactly? They submitted documents declaring you as a financially dependent person with mental health issues. This allowed them to access government assistance programs, tax deductions for elder care, and preferential loans. My blood began to run cold. They financially benefited from pretending I had mental problems. Exactly. Here are the tax returns for the last 3 years. They received deductions for medical expenses that never existed, subsidies for elder care they never really provided, and several loans they justified by saying they needed the money for your care expenses. I reviewed the documents in disbelief. There were fake medical bills, receipts for medications I had never taken, even reports from a psychiatrist who was supposedly treating me for senile dementia. How did you get all this? I have contacts in various institutions. When a story like yours becomes public, sometimes people who were previously silent decide to speak up. Stephen pulled out more papers. But there's something more serious. Victoria has been running a blog for 2 years where she documents her heroic struggle caring for her mother-in-law with dementia. He showed me printouts of the blog. The title was Living with Margaret, a devoted daughter-in-law's diary. I read some entries with growing horror. Today, Margaret had another episode. She couldn't remember where she put her medicine and blamed me for hiding it. It's so hard to stay patient when the illness makes her so aggressive. Daniel is exhausted. Working all day and then coming home to deal with his mother's mood swings is wearing him down. But we carry on out of love. The doctors say Margaret's condition is only going to get worse. We're considering professional care options. It's heartbreaking, but perhaps it's for the best for everyone. Is all of this made up? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Completely fabricated. But here's the interesting part. The blog has generated income. It has sponsors, affiliate links, even a donation account to help with Margaret's medical expenses. How much money have they made from this? Approximately $15,000 over the last 2 years. I was speechless. They hadn't just planned to get rid of me. They had been profiting from lies about my mental health for years. There's more, Stephen continued. Victoria also created a profile on a crowdfunding platform 6 months ago. They were raising money to renovate the house and make it safer for a person with dementia. How much did they raise? $8,000 so far. It was too much. I got up from my seat and walked to the window. The city view that usually calmed me now felt blurred by rage. What can I do legally with this information? A lot. Fraud, swindling, misappropriation, defamation. We could build a solid case that could result in criminal charges. My phone rang at that moment. It was Daniel, probably calling for the 15th time that week. This time, I decided to answer. Yes, Mom. Thank God you answered. We need to talk urgently. I'm busy, Daniel. Mom, please. Victoria is having panic attacks. The harassers online are posting our address. Last night, someone threw eggs at the house. What a shame. Mom, we're your family. You can't be okay with this happening to us. My family? The family that diagnosed me with senile dementia without my knowledge to obtain financial benefits. A long silence. What are you talking about? I'm talking about Victoria's blog. I'm talking about the false tax returns. I'm talking about the loans you got by lying about my mental condition. Mom, I don't know anything about that. You don't know anything about the blog Living with Margaret, where your wife documents my supposed dementia episodes? You don't know anything about the donations you've been receiving for my medical care? You don't know anything about the fake medical bills you submitted to get tax deductions? This time, the silence was deafening. Daniel, I have an investigative journalist sitting right here with documents that prove everything I've just said. Do you want to keep lying? Mom, if there was anything irregular, it was Victoria's idea. I didn't know the details. You didn't know the details of stealing money using my name? You didn't know the details of inventing a mental illness I don't have. Victoria said it was legal. She said that since you lived with us, we were entitled to those benefits. And the blog? Was it also legal to lie publicly about my mental health to make money? Mom, I didn't read the blog. Victoria handled those things. Daniel, do you know what the difference is between you and me? What? When I make a mistake, I own it and take responsibility. You, on the other hand, always find someone else to blame. Mom, please, can we fix this? No, Daniel, we can't. This gets fixed with justice. I hung up and looked at Stephen. When can we file the lawsuits? The lawsuits were filed on a Tuesday morning. Benjamin had worked all night to prepare the documents. Tax fraud, swindling, defamation, identity theft, and elder abuse. It was a legal arsenal that would leave Daniel and Victoria with no escape. But before the documents reached their hands, I had one last card to play. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? Stephen asked me as he set up the recording equipment in my living room. Completely sure. The people who donated money believing Victoria's lies deserve to know the truth. We had decided to do a live broadcast on social media. In just 2 hours, more than 50,000 people had registered to watch. The story had captured the nation's attention. We're live in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon. I am Margaret Vance, and today, I am going to share information with you that will completely change what you thought about my family situation. I looked directly at the camera. Over the last few days, an investigative journalist has discovered that my son and daughter-in-law have been lying about my mental health for years to obtain financial benefits. I held up a copy of Victoria's blog. My daughter-in-law, Victoria, created a blog called Living with Margaret, where she invented a completely false version of my life. According to her writings, I suffer from senile dementia, have aggressive episodes, and require constant medical care. None of this is true. As you can see in this broadcast, I am in perfect mental condition. I manage my own finances. I live independently, and I make all my own decisions without help. I read one of the blog entries. Today, Margaret had another episode. She couldn't remember where she put her medicine and blamed me for hiding it. I smiled grimly. This entry is dated on a day I was in New York, closing a real estate investment. The live comments multiplied by the second. People were outraged. But the lie goes beyond the blog. Using these false stories, they obtained tax deductions for non-existent medical expenses, government subsidies for elder care they never provided, and donations from well-intentioned people who believed their narrative. I showed the tax documents. In total, they have obtained approximately $25,000 by lying about my mental condition. My phone started ringing insistently. It was Daniel, probably watching the broadcast in a panic. "I see my son is trying to call me right now," I said, showing the phone to the camera. Probably to ask me to stop this broadcast. I decided to answer and put it on speaker. "Mom, please stop that broadcast. You're destroying our lives." "Hello, Daniel. I'm live with 50,000 people. Is there anything you want to say publicly about Victoria's blog and the money you obtained by lying about my health?" "Mom, I didn't know you were live." "Hang up right now." "Why should I hang up? Are you afraid of people hearing your side of the story?" "This is all Victoria's fault. I didn't know anything about the blog. She handled those things." The comments exploded. People couldn't believe he was blaming his wife live on air. "Daniel, so you admit that Victoria lied about my mental condition?" I don't know what to admit. Just stop the broadcast. Do you admit that you received money under false pretenses?" "Mom, please." "It's a simple question, Daniel. Yes or no?" A long silence. Then we heard Victoria's voice shouting in the background. "Hang up. Don't say anything else." "Is that Victoria?" I asked. "Does she want to join the conversation?" I'm sure the 50,000 people watching us would have some interesting questions for her. "No," Victoria screamed. "Daniel, hang up now." "Victoria," I said, raising my voice. "Could you explain to the audience why you invented stories about my dementia? Could you explain how you justified the money you earned with those lies? You have no right to ruin our lives like this." Victoria shouted, grabbing the phone. "I have no right after you ruined mine for 5 years? We took care of you. We gave you a home." "Victoria, I'm reading your blog live. It says here I had a violent episode on March 15th. Could you explain what happened that day?" That was because. It turns out on that day I was in Miami, visiting my investment broker. I have receipts, photos, witnesses. Those details don't matter. They don't matter? Lying about someone's mental health doesn't matter? You abandoned us. You disappeared in the night like a thief. "Victoria, I left because I overheard your phone conversation, planning to commit me to a nursing home without my consent. It was for the best. The best for me, or the most convenient for you." The call was abruptly cut off. The comments went wild. People were virtually applauding, sharing the broadcast, expressing their support. As you can see, I continued calmly. It's hard to maintain lies when you're confronted with real evidence. This broadcast isn't just about my personal story. It's about something much bigger, the systematic abuse of senior citizens by family members who take advantage of their perceived vulnerability. Tomorrow, my lawyers will file formal lawsuits against Daniel and Victoria for fraud, swindling, and defamation. All the money they obtained fraudulently will be returned to the corresponding institutions and to the people who donated believing their lies. But more important than legal justice is moral justice. I want my story to serve as a warning. Never let anyone take away your dignity, no matter how old you are or how vulnerable you may seem. Thank you for joining me today. I will keep you informed about the progress of the legal case. I ended the broadcast with over 80,000 viewers. My phone immediately exploded with messages of support, interview offers, and contacts from other seniors sharing their own stories. But the message that satisfied me the most came an hour later. It was from the crowdfunding platform, informing me that they had closed Victoria's account and frozen the funds pending distribution. Justice was finally beginning. 6 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of my penthouse, enjoying my morning coffee while reading the day's news. The front page of the local newspaper had a headline that made me smile. Couple sentenced to prison for fraud against a senior citizen. Daniel had received 2 years in prison. Victoria, as the mastermind of the scheme, had received 3.5 years. In addition, they would have to pay a $50,000 fine and perform community service in nursing homes once they completed their sentences. Justice had been complete and profoundly satisfying. But the most rewarding part was not their punishment, but what I had built with my newfound freedom. The Margaret Vance Foundation for the Protection of Seniors had already helped over 200 people in situations similar to mine. We had established a helpline, free legal services, and a financial education program for older adults. My story had inspired changes in state legislation on elder abuse. It was now more difficult for family members to obtain fraudulent benefits, and there were stronger protections for vulnerable seniors. But perhaps most importantly, I had rediscovered myself. At 71, I had learned to dance salsa, enrolled in painting classes, and traveled to places I had only dreamed of visiting. I had an active social life, true friends, and a renewed purpose. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Lauren, my real estate agent, who had become one of my best friends. "Margaret, did you see the news? I just read about the sentencing." "Perfect." "No, not that. Did you see that Victoria tried to sell her story to a television production company?" I laughed. "Seriously? What story?" "The one about how she defrauded her mother-in-law and ended up in prison. Apparently, she wanted to make a series about the dark side of social media and how internet justice destroyed her life." The nerve. "And what happened?" "The production company rejected the proposal after investigating the facts. Turns out they prefer stories with more sympathetic protagonists." That afternoon, I had an important meeting. I had decided to write a book about my experience, and my editor was coming to discuss the final details of the contract. "Margaret," she said as we reviewed the manuscript, "your story is powerful because it's real. There's no fictional revenge or magical justice. It's simply a woman who decided not to be a victim." That was exactly the message I wanted to convey. "Have you thought about making any contact with Daniel now that he's in prison?" "I've thought about it, I admit it. But I've decided I have nothing to say to him until he shows real change. Empty apologies don't rebuild broken trust. And if he wanted to make amends when he gets out, he would have to start by fully acknowledging what he did, without excuses, without blaming Victoria. He would have to show that he understands the harm he caused. And he would have to accept that the relationship would never be the same." That evening, as I prepared dinner in my gourmet kitchen, I reflected on the journey I had taken. The woman who had escaped through the back door that morning had been a frightened victim. The woman cooking now was an empowered survivor. My story had proven something that many people forget. It is never too late to reclaim your life. I had learned that kindness does not mean being a doormat, that family love does not justify abuse, that age is not synonymous with vulnerability, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply to live well. My phone showed a message from a 68-year-old woman in Mexico who had seen my interview. "Mrs. Margaret, your story gave me the courage to confront my family. After 2 years of humiliation, I finally stood up for myself. Thank you for showing me that I deserve respect." Messages like that arrived daily. Each one reminded me why it had been worth making my story public. As I had dinner on my terrace, watching the city lights stretch to the horizon, I silently toasted to all the women who had found their voice after years of silence. Daniel and Victoria had thought they were discarding me like trash. Instead, they had freed me to become the best version of myself. On my desk was a photo of my late husband. I spoke to him as I did every night. "My love, I know you would be proud." I didn't let them turn me into a victim. I defended my dignity, and I helped others defend theirs. That night, before sleeping, I wrote in my journal, "I don't regret adopting Daniel when he was a child. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction." The next morning, I would have a new interview, another opportunity to tell my story, another chance to help someone who felt invisible in their own life. Because in the end, I had discovered that my true purpose was not to be the perfect mother or the accommodating mother-in-law. My purpose was to simply be Margaret, a whole, independent, and free woman.